Okay, awesome, cool. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate it because I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and then COVID happened. Um, but yeah, let's begin. So just to get to know you and your background, is this what 7-year-old Nda thought he would be doing?
I would be completely lying to you if I told you that that was indeed what I thought I'd be doing when I was 7 years old. I think when I was actually 7 years old, I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to sort of make animation films. I was really passionate about that at that age, and I genuinely thought that that's what I'd be when I'm older. But as they say, life has a funny way of working out. So now I find myself, working in an insurance startup.
And now leading on to obviously where you are today. So let's go to your graduation, for example. Were you looking for jobs like a lot of us, or were you just hell bent on, I'm going to just start this business in tech, obviously with some coding, etc.?
Yeah, so there's I'll say another 2 or 3 chapters in between, sort of eventually being part of the team that founded Pineapple. So when I finished my undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I fact that I wasn't ready to start working. I wanted to somehow get at least one more year in the tertiary space just to figure my life plan out. So I ended up applying to UCT's tax honors program, and I was eventually accepted into that. And basically, this is a 1-year program. It's an honors program. It's a 1-year program, so that gave me enough time just to finally start putting my eggs in a row and figure out what I want to do in the bad world. So fortunate enough for me, when I went back to UCT for my honors year, there was a new coding bootcamp that was started in Cape Town. It was the first coding bootcamp in Cape Town. It was started that same year when I started doing my honors. And by that time, I'd probably been coding for about maybe a year and a bit. Sure. And I was just doing like projects of my own, learning cool things. But I wasn't really doing industry relevant stuff. I was just doing like small fun projects like text-based games and those sort of things. But at that point, I wasn't able to build any big or crazy apps or whatnot. So I saw this opportunity to apply to this bootcamp, and I did that. And fortunate for me, I was accepted to take part in it. But the tricky part was that this bootcamp was a full-time gig. So you'd be expected to go at 9 a.m. and then knock off at 4 p.m. But obviously at that time, I was doing my honors full-time as well. Yeah, so I decided to skip out on classes for honors and go to this full-time. And then in the evenings, I'd just make up for the day's work for schoolwork. And that, it was a bit tough at first, but that really worked out well. And I managed to, finish my honors year as well as graduate from that coding bootcamp. So then what happened with that coding bootcamp is that at the end of the program, they put you in contact with potential employers, right? It was through that network that I was put into contact with my first boss. And I ended up working at a software engineering company in Cape Town. They have an office in Joburg as well. So I started working there at the Cape Town branch, and I moved to Joburg and continued working at the Joburg branch. I think I worked there for about a year and a half, just under 2 years actually. And that's where I really started to hone in on the skill and become a professional at it. And then that's when we, decided to quit our jobs and do this Pineapple thing. So
segueing into actually that, what sparked the idea of obviously Pineapple? You are first of all choosing to go into a dominated industry by big players that have been in the market, for years, that have, I would probably say, captured the the baby boomers, maybe not us millennials, but they've captured a lot of the markets, etc. So, I mean, how did the idea come about? Why insurance? How did you spot the gap? And first
Yeah.
of all, actually,
So a
how
few
did
months,
you? Yeah, sorry. Let me let you go.
yeah. So a few months ago, I remember I said there's like 3 chapters between me graduating and finally starting Pineapple. So I've told you 2 of those chapters. The first one being the
Mm,
the tax honest lab camp, and the second one being the full-time employment as a software engineer. So the third chapter was that during the time when I was working as a software developer, I came across another opportunity, which was basically a competition, an
mhm,
innovation competition that was being ran by a reinsurance company called Hanover Reinsurance. So in essence, for those of your listeners who are unsure as to what a reinsurance company is, these are the people who sell insurance to insurance companies. So the likes of King Price, Outsurance, and so forth, they themselves purchase insurance in order to cover the chance where a large majority of their policyholders make a claim at the same time and they can't afford to pay out all the claims at the same time. Then they themselves had to put in a claim with their reinsurer to get the cash to basically pay those claims out. So this specific reinsurance company, Hanover Reinsurance, they created a competition, an innovation competition that essentially had the purpose of honing disruptive talent in the insurance space. So they wanted people who didn't really have exposure to the insurance industry to take part in this thing and look at the insurance problem with fresh eyes. And essentially how the competition worked was that the office in Johannesburg, Berlin, Boston, and Dublin each had to put together 2 teams of 3 individuals who would represent that hub, right?
mm,
And then would be supplied with office space on a full-time basis for 6 months, so that in that 6-month period, all that each team has to focus on is trying to come up with a disruptive idea that would literally change the face of insurance. So I came across the application form for this competition, and I thought to myself, hey, I've been quite lucky with random applications, so let's see where this one takes me.
mm,
So I applied to that one, and once again, I was fortunate enough to be selected to take part in it. And I was put into the same team as my now co-founders.
mm-hmm,
And it was during that competition where we were tasked with trying to find the pain points in insurance
mm-hmm.
and trying to find how to switch that into a new innovative idea that will spearhead insurance forward.
Sure.
And that's essentially how the 3 of us came together and started building on this idea.
So, so now obviously you did the research and just take me through some of the pain points that you came up with, and then how did you hone into the final pain points, which obviously formed the company of Pineapple at the end of the day.
So really, we started to take a very holistic view of the insurance industry, going way back to its roots even. And what we found was that, the concept of insurance was formed, it must have been in the early to mid 1800s. And essentially how it was formed was that in London, there was a cafe called Lloyd's of London. And in essence, you'd have a group of sailors who would come together and sit together at a round table. And each of them would talk about their upcoming voyages that they were about to embark on. And as a collective, all of these sailors around the table would start to tell everybody else about their respective assets that they could potentially lose should they go under. So then the sailors started to say amongst each other, hey guys, there's all of us sitting at this table. What if we all put in money into a centralized pot, such that should any of us suffer any accidents while out on a voyage, you can make a claim into that centralized money, and that will be used to help to get you back into a place where you were before the accident, which is basically the core concept of insurance, right? But the one major difference between the concept back then and the concept of insurance now is that because all of those sailors were all sitting amongst each other at a table, they all knew each other and they all had a very good understanding of each person's risk profile. So in essence, each of them were able to either opt in or opt out of putting money into that centralized kitty, right? And that's a very important fact in insurance, because if you have that personalized affinity towards somebody, you're less likely to do something fraudulent because you're hurting somebody who you actually know. But then what we found was that as insurance started to grow and as more and more people started to seek insurance, it became impossible for insurance providers to essentially give their policyholders a platform for all of them to know each other. And that's when insurance started to sort of grow towards the direction which we know traditional insurance today, right? Where you have a centralized insurer, in essence, collects premiums and pays out the claims, but the policyholders themselves are unaware of each other and they're unaware of each other's risk profiles. And the problems that come up with that, somebody is more inclined to act fraudulently because you're no longer defrauding a personal human being, but you're defrauding a cold and faceless insurance company. So you no longer have that moral sort of feeling, that bad feeling if you do something fraudulent in the context of an insurance company. But what we see now is that with the advent of technology and social platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, it is indeed now possible for us to form those networks online and sort of go back to that concept of affinity, where policyholders can potentially know each other and know each other's risk profiles and so forth. So then that's when we started to ask ourselves, okay, how do we leverage technology and sort of, take insurance back to its roots concept, the concept of affinity and people knowing each other and trusting each other, and therefore reducing fraud in the insurance ecosystem.
So, okay. And obviously, I've researched some of Pineapple. It's like peer insurance. So, which is a great concept. So now, let me start off with, because I have many questions, but I'll try to keep it short. Why Pineapple? Take me through the name. When you picked the name, out of all names, very interesting.
Yeah, that's another funny story. Come to think of it, like our entire journey has been made up of like coincidences or like weird stories or whatnot. It's pretty funny. So regarding the Pineapple name, we actually were initially named Amity, which is basically like a French francophone word that in essence means connectivity or friendship. Okay. So our original, that's what we were getting ready to launch with. And at the 11th hour, we decided to apply for a trademark on that name. And it became apparent to us that there already was a company in Pretoria, a financial services provider, who went by the name Amity and who had a trademark on that name. So obviously that name. So we had to have an emergency brainstorming session at the 11th hour to come up with a new name. And, eventually we came down to the name Pineapple because not only is it a memorable and fresh name, but what a lot of people don't actually understand about the fruit, the pineapple, is that it's not one sort of holistic fruit. The way a pineapple is made is that it consists of a bunch of berries that come together to form the collective fruit that we know as the pineapple. Because our sentiments of how with the affinity concept and people coming together and protecting each other and having complete oversight of each other.
Wow, and pineapple is actually one of my favorite fruits, and I did not know that. So that is very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you guys have obviously identified the pain points in terms of, let's bring it back to knowing the different risk profiles of basically peer-to-peer insurance. Like I can insure with my friend. I know if he's a risky person. Come up with the name. So now what? I'm just trying to understand, like, okay, you have this idea, you want to start this company, you have the office space for 6 months, right? As you mentioned. Do you guys build the app? Why an app? And who builds the app? And what are the challenges around that?
Yeah. So throughout that 6-month competition, we didn't actually build an app. So the whole purpose of the competition was that at the end of the competition, all the teams flew to Germany to pitch their ideas to the group CEO and his exco. And whichever ideas they saw potential in would help you develop, well, the group company would help you further develop that idea to the point where it was ready for investment. So they liked our take on what insurance could be. And they, gave us a few more months to develop that idea. So they moved us into the Hanover Re offices in Rosebank. And we spent a few months just tightening up the idea, making it bulletproof, and getting a bit of assistance as well in terms of like the legal side, the compliance side, and so forth, registering the business, all of that jazz. And eventually, once Hanover Re was happy with the concept as a whole, they invested in our company. And that, in essence, gave us the initial sort of runway to start developing the application. So when it came to the actual development of the application, we, at the time, it was still just the three of us. And I was the only one on the team with coding experience. So we enlisted the services of a coding service provider, a company in St. Chiron. Basically hired an extra 2 developers from them to help us sort of get the developments going and eventually get us to market. So that's the route that we followed.
Okay, so just on that, so just 2 questions from what you mentioned, and thanks for that. Just on, as you're developing this concept, I'm just trying to understand, was there an MVP, the whole iteration process? Did you test it with any early stage consumers, the early adopters? So how did you actually prove your concept? And I'm assuming you use minimal budgets. That's my first question, yeah.
Coming fresh out of that Hanover Re competition, we had been given sort of experience with the design methodology, approach to launching innovative ideas. And basically, this methodology puts emphasis on quick iterations and feedback from customers. So what we did with the Pineapple application was, before we even wrote a single line of code, we took a bunch of pieces of paper and drew the app screen by screen on each piece of paper. And we essentially used that as the MVP and went around to like potential customers and asked them, hey, if this was an insurance app, like, would you enjoy using it? Would it be confusing? What do you like? What don't you? And eventually through those type of exercises, we built an idea of how the actual UI, the user interface of the app would look. And then from there, we actually, coding, each screen of the app. And I think every week or every 2 weeks would try to get somebody who had never seen the app before to take a look at it and give us an opinion on what they like, what they don't like. We'd let them play around with it. And through those sort of sessions, we're able to get like massive feedback at a very high turnaround time. And that helped us to speed up development and make sure that we're actually building something that people want as opposed to, because that's a risk as well, right? If you fall so in love with your idea and your solution, you might end up that you think people want, but they don't actually want it at the end of the day.
No, that's very true. And I love that in terms of obviously just testing out with actually a real customer instead of building it, in the back room until it's finished, and then you're like, there you go, guys, it's gonna fly off the shelf. The whole customer development model. So now you spoke about hiring 2 developers in-house. So I just want to understand, from obviously you need to pay these people, right? Hiring these people, and I'm sure obviously with the internet you can easily search developers and you'll find. But how did you manage to pay them? Was it from the funding you got from the competition?
So initially, as the 3 founders, we put together our own cash just to kickstart the development. So from that initial, kitty, that's how we got the first. I think that got us about 3 months worth of development.
Okay.
But by the time the 3rd/4th month came, we'd already secured the funding from Hanover Re through Lirius, the investment arm. And that sort of took us across the finish line in terms of the development costs.
Okay. No, makes sense. You've obviously tested, you've hired the two developers, you've developed the app. By the way, I wanted to know, whilst you're building the app, like, what are did you face any challenges? How long did it actually take to build the app? Because I mean, when I speak to other entrepreneurs, there are there are many horror stories that I hear at times. But yeah, I'd love to know your experience in building the app.
So I guess for us, the biggest issue was trying to find an insurance backend system that we could hook up into. So our whole approach was that we know what we're good at, and we want to stay true to what we're good at. And the thing that we're good at, the technology aspect of the game. What we didn't have a lot of experience in is the actual sort of heavy lifting stuff in terms of the systems that manage policies, the systems that manage the claims process, the systems that sort of manage pricing a customer and showing them what premium they expected to pay. So we partnered up with a service provider who would help us with that. And it was quite challenging to integrate into their system. It was quite a big project, and it took us quite a few months to perfect it, but we eventually got it across the finish line. But it was tough nonetheless. And there are a lot of things, that we've taken away from that. In terms of the actual developments of the app on our side, I think, of course, you always have things that you learn, and there's things that you change looking back. I think for us, the biggest learning point was that you should try to get the thing into the hands of the customer as soon as possible. The thing is, as a creator of an idea or a stakeholder in an idea, especially an app-based idea, when it comes to you testing the actual app, let's say you're about to launch it and now you have to test it to make sure that it works the way that you intend it to work. As somebody who is a stakeholder in that app, when you test the app, you are more likely to sort of follow a user journey that makes sense and a user journey that isn't likely to run into any bugs, if that makes sense. You're not going to intentionally try to break the app because it's your baby, and you don't want to really sort of be confronted with the idea that your app isn't perfect. So you're more likely to be very passive when you test the app. But when you get the app into a consumer's hand, like a consumer will do a lot of crazy things in an app, things that you didn't even expect somebody to do. So for instance, if you put a button in an app, you'd think somebody would just press that button.
Yeah.
But you never actually think of the possibility of like a user accidentally holding down on that button and pressing it for too long, or like triple tapping it or double tapping it. And all of these things can potentially lead to bugs if you can't handle them. So what we realized was that if you don't get the thing out into a customer's hand soon enough, you're probably not going to be able to uncover those type of bugs, and those will only be finally in the customer's hand, and it'll just be a bit difficult for you to manage the user experience.
And just sorry, because I jump around because I'm a very curious person. So just on the app, and I'm sure you probably mentioned it briefly, but why an app versus not just how can I put it, a normal company, maybe just having a website or call in, especially like in South Africa. Like, let me actually take a step back. Who was your target audience? Your consumer persona, etc. Because I guess that will feed into why you probably chose the app at the end of the day.
Exactly. So that's exactly how I was going to answer that. So what we wanted, or at least who we wanted to target, was your typical millennial who probably has only a handful of high value items, which most likely include the laptop and the cell phone, maybe a musical instrument, and the TV. These are people who typically aren't catered for by traditional insurers, because traditional insurers make it difficult for you to obtain insurance on an item by item basis. You either have to go through the blanket cover approach, or in order for you to qualify for their item by item insurance products, you typically have to have another policy with them. So either a motor policy with them, or a life policy, or whatnot. So what we realized was that the actual possibility of getting item by item based insurance was non-existent in SA. And that's why we wanted to target those millennials, because they were being underserved, right?
Mm.
And the reason why we went for an app is A, because of convenience, B, because people are used to transacting on an application basis. If you look at your Ubers, your banking apps and whatnot. And C, and this is probably the biggest reason, was because of the access to sort of the data that we can collect using cell phones. So, for instance, I'm not so sure if you played around with the Pineapple app, but when somebody is insuring something, we just require you to take a picture of that item,
Yes.
and then the heavy lifting for you. So if we didn't have an app, that picture first approach wouldn't be possible. Even if we had that picture first approach would be extremely difficult, having to use a website. And then there's a bunch of other fraud prevention mechanisms that we make use of. And in order to do this, we require access to certain modules of yourself. So for instance, once again, when you're making a claim on Pineapple, we require you to record a voice note where you essentially explain what happened in the incident leading up to your loss. And the reason why we do that is because we run a multi-analysis on your voice, just to detect the stress levels in your voice. And we essentially flag those voice notes that could that basically indicates a high stress level in the person's voice, which could be indicative of a lie being told. So all of these things wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the use of a cell phone and an app.
Okay, very, very interesting. I mean, clearly, yeah, your back end and the machine learning that you guys have there is probably is solid. Clearly, as you're mentioning it. So now, okay, you have the app, you've gotten it out to the user as fast. Can you just talk to me about, you have this product now, about getting your first, say, 100 customers, that first sale up into 100. How did that feel? How did you do it? What marketing did you do around that?
So, yeah, initially when we started, we really went for the, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a sales approach called spray and pray.
Yes. Someone will bite. Yeah.
Yeah, someone has to buy. You need to throw this thing enough times at the wall, it's bound to stick, right?
Yeah.
We used a whole bunch of, we experimented with a whole bunch of approaches in terms of getting our initial sales. So I'll just outline two of the most successful ones. So the first one was leading up to our launch, maybe about 4 or 5 months before we launched. We had our landing page up as a website, and in essence, if somebody went there, we gave them the opportunity to put in their email address and basically get onto a waiting list to use the app. And once you put in your email address, you'd be presented with basically a score which tracked how far from the front of the queue you were. And we gave users the ability to share sort of on the social platform that they're part of the early waiting list with Pineapple. And the more people clicked on that link back to our website from the link that you shared, we would bump you up in the list. So we basically started to allow people to gamify how far off from the front of the list they were from being the first users to use Pineapple. And that helped us to get a really, really big initial mailing list of potential customers. I think we got a list of must have been about 5,000 emails.
Wow.
Who wanted to use the app. So the day we launched the app, on a week by week basis, we rolled out the app and made it available to an additional 200 people in that list. And the way we framed it was that you're getting early access to Pineapple. What would love from you is feedback on the app. If you run into any, let us know. If there's something you don't like, let us know. If there's something you love, let us know. So this basically helped us to get buy-in from these customers. And that helped really well in terms of getting us our initial customers. And once we were ready to launch the full public, what we did was, I'm not too sure if you read about this, is we went to a vegetable store in Johannesburg, and we sort of managed to procure about, it was 30,000 pineapples, the fruits. and we made, we made see-through sort of carry bags for these pineapples with our branding on those bags. And we sent 10,000 of those pineapples to Pretoria. We sent 10,000 to Cape Town, and we sent another 10,000 in Joburg. And then we got a bunch of students to go to different intersections across each of these cities. And on the day that we're launching the app, they basically started handing out these pineapples, the fruits, at intersections with the marketing material and information about us and where people can download the app. And that started to spark a lot of people's curiosity as to who we were and what we're doing and whatnot. And on top of that, we managed to get a slot on radio that same day on Power FM, just to give people sort of an explanation as to who we are, what we do, why we're handing out pineapples and so forth. So that campaign was really, really successful for us as well.
Guerrilla marketing at its best on the pineapple. That is very clever, actually. Oh man, no, no, I didn't actually read about that one. That's a lovely, lovely story, actually. Um, so just to go back quickly. So now I'm just being selfish because I'm always interested in terms of the when you cross the chasm, obviously. Your landing page, when you're bumping people up, how did you market that? Was that on social media? So how did you get people to actually sign up on the email list?
So to do that, we did a lot of radio interviews at that time, telling what we plan to do, when we plan to launch, how they can find out more information about us, how they can follow our journey. And we just kept redirecting people back to that website. We even went to universities and gave talks in lectures and student societies, telling them about what we wanted to do and just redirecting everybody back to this website, this landing page, and driving traffic there. And that's how we started to get people to visit that page. We also had stuff out on social media as well, which drove traffic to our webpage.
Okay. No, very, very, very interesting, actually, and insightful. You, sorry, I just remembered now that for some of the people that actually don't know, because I mean, I know what pineapple is, and we've been speaking about pineapple this whole time. Like, in a tweet format, like, what is pineapple, in your words, and why is it actually different to your traditional insurance for the listeners that might not know?
Ooh. So Pineapple is a digital first insurance provider. We allow you to insure your belongings, your general belongings, as well as your motor vehicle at the snap of a picture. And in essence, what differentiates us from traditional insurance companies is that the money that we collect in premiums, whatever of that is not used to pay out claims, we return it back to the policyholder. So
Okay.
if you don't claim as much, you stand to gain a lot back in premiums.
Okay. Yeah, sweet and short and straight to the point and very clear. So my last two questions just around pineapple, and thank you for all you've obviously shared. Something we don't, I guess, I hear a lot or speak about in terms of going on this entrepreneurship journey and being part of a startup is the toll it can take on either family or if you have a partner, siblings, So just tell me in terms of your circle, friends, family, if you have a partner, how was that and how do they take it? Because sometimes you get people that are like, great idea, go ahead, but not really believing that's going to be successful. So just tell me, take us through that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I guess I'll start off with the family part. I come from a family where all of us are involved in the commerce space. My dad is actually involved in the insurance space as well. He was involved in the reinsurance space, then he moved to the insurance space. So I'll say the entrepreneurial journey wasn't really a shock for them. What did shock them was when I told them I don't want to be a CA, but rather be a software engineer. They malfunctioned when I told them that. Imagine like an African family about to have like a son, start doing articles,
Yeah.
chart, you're going to be able to tell your family friends that no, my son is on his way to be a CA. Just
Yeah.
son to come back to university, he wants to write code instead. So yeah, that for them was like they were blindsided by that, and they completely short circuited. They didn't know how to. But when it actually came to me saying, "Okay, guys, this is what we want to start," I had the full blessing from the get go. My mom is an entrepreneur; she started a company. So the concept of starting your own business wasn't one that was foreign to my family at all. The coding thing was foreign though. That was yeah.
And no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I would have loved to be a fly on that wall when you drop the news, with the silence afterwards. I'm sure they might have been like, "I'm loyal, mtanam."
That chat.
Okay, no, very, very interesting. And I'm glad, obviously, you got the support because, I mean, look at how the company is doing very well. So, I mean, you're privileged in that aspect. I'm just going to also just slot in one more question at the end, but just on Pineapple, can you describe a tough time you went through in the business, and if yes, how did you actually overcome that? Something that comes to mind.
A tough time in the business.
Maybe when sales were stagnating, or I just don't want to put any ideas in your head, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that the toughest time for us was especially when you're launching an app, right? You tend to want to get to market as fast as possible just to get that market validation.
Sure.
So it ties in with the MVP concept that you spoke about early on. What you want to roll out an MVP, one that can perform the minimum sort of revenue generating action that you're doing, and you can get feedback from people about that. So our initial MVP got the job done, but it wasn't really the you couldn't build a future with it. So I think the toughest times for us was when we got to the point where we realized that, okay, the MVP has served us well, but now we're starting to inherit a lot of technical debt because of the product. So we ended up rebuilding the app from the ground up. And that time was tough because, you're still trying to service active customers, but at the same time, you're trying to sort of rebuild the app as well. So it's a massive juggling act, but we managed to do it. And it's been one of the best decisions we've.
And I guess it was a big learning curve because it's the way you're describing it. It's almost like you had to dig deep within your soul to say, "Okay, we're doing this again." It's
At the time, you're in love with like the idea of new features, cool new things you can do, but then it's like you can't build a castle on a swamp. This will never hold, no matter how many builders you get, no matter sort of what technology you use. If the foundation is solid, you're not going to go very, very far. So I guess for us it was a matter of just coming to that moment of complete honesty and saying, hey guys, the MVP has done us well, but it's time to sort of start fresh.
Yeah. No, glad it was you, not me, man. And now my last question, in terms of just highlighting the success of Pineapple. I mean, I know you're a private company, so you can never really talk about the numbers you're doing. But I don't know, are you allowed to talk about maybe the growth that you guys have seen? Okay.
I can't talk about the actual growth in terms of policy sales.
No. So I was just saying year-on-year growth. Are you allowed to speak about that, the exponential growth that you guys have seen year-on-year, or is that?
Yeah. So in terms of like policy growth on a monthly basis, I think we're currently growing at about, the last time I checked, that is, on a month-to-month basis, I think we're growing at about like 25%, 20 to 25%.
Wow. That is so. Yeah, that's wow. Month on month.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. No, very, very, very interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your guys' journey. I know you're still a very young company, but you're making a lot of waves. I'm even going to switch because one of my insurance was trying to get me personal household. I'm like, no, I might as well. You know what? I want to be an early adopter for once. Or yeah. So let me jump on, especially like my TV. I'm your target market, so it's definitely excited to see where you guys end up. And I hope you're going to be around for the foreseeable future and become one of these legacy companies that were born out of South Africa. By the way, what are your expansion plans? That I never asked actually. Yeah.
So we actually very recently launched in the States. We're currently live in the state of Texas in partnership with one of the large insurance carriers in the States. Unfortunately, I can't name them as of yet because we're waiting for them to release the press release. Will follow suit this side as well, but we are live in Texas. We're toying around with potentially launching our brand as it is there as well. Currently, right now, we've white labeled our app for another provider, but with the basically testing the waters and seeing how that market is and if there's appetite for us to launch our own brand there.
My word. If I could cue the DJ air horn right now, boop, 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 yeah, I'd be doing that. That's awesome news, man. And okay, just on that. So the American market obviously is just a different beast altogether. It's almost like David versus Goliath. In my research that I've done, the competition. How's the competition there? I know obviously insurance is big, but the whole peer-to-peer insurance do you have competitors there?
You're talking about the States now?
Yeah, the States.
Yeah. So I guess that's an interesting one. I think the biggest player there in that space, let me say in the Insuretech space, is a startup. I wouldn't even call them a startup anymore. They're a company by the name of Lemonade. They initially positioned themselves as a peer-to-peer insurance provider, but I think they've sort of doubled down on the peer-to-peer narrative, and now they've sort of doubled down on the whole technology-first insurance provider. But I'd say they are pretty much the biggest competitor in the Insuretech space in the United States. But they're massive. Recently IPO'd as well, so they are massive. They are hashtag.
So, and sorry, I smile because in my head I'm like, clearly it's gonna be the battle of the fruits now. Like, come on, lemonade versus pineapple. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, no, cool. So yeah, that brings it to an end. Again, look, I want to thank you for actually your time. I know you're a very busy person, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview. It's everything that I expected it to be. Thank you for sharing the insights from Pineapple. And yeah, man, as I said earlier, I'm excited to see where you guys are going to go. Hopefully, you're going to be there using your superpower to obviously lead the charge and be this superpower pineapple company, you know. But yeah, thank you again, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the conversation. It was a very insightful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
No, thank you, man. Let me just stop